Near Moscow, a Russian passenger plane, Sukhoi Superjet 100, crashed. Are Russians preparing a new terrorist attack or trying to intimidate Ukrainians? MFA of Russia announced intention to blow up Kyiv hydroelectric power station. General Budanov said that there will be no much good news this year, unfortunately. Where Zelensky goes next week and why Russians won't see the Olympic Games. I'm Maria Drutska and we will speak about this all today. In the Moscow region near Kolomna on July 12th, a passenger plane of Russian production Sukhoi Superjet 100 crashed. It is claimed that there was no passengers on board, only just 3 crew members who died. According to the Russian state propaganda agency TASS, the plane crashed during a test flight after routine maintenance. It was flying from the aviation plant near the town of Lyubertsy to Vnukovo airport in Moscow. A source from the Interfax agency in emergency services reported that during the flight, the crew signal distress was redirected to a holding pattern and the plane began circling to burn off fuel before attempting an emergency landing. During the approach to the third circle, the plane crashed. Primary data suggests that the crash of the Sukhoi Superjet 100 could have been caused by a failure of the French engine. The plane was manufactured in 2014 and belonged to Gazprom Avia. Its manufacturer is the United Aircraft Corporation, UAC. According to the Russian Ministry of Industry and Trade, the plane was not fully import substituted. The Ministry of Emergency Situation of the Russian Federation confirmed the air crash. The investigative committee of the Russian Federation has initiated a criminal case under the article on violations of traffic safety rules and operation of air transport, resulting in the careless death of 2 or more persons. Reuters noted that this is the third crash of the Sukhoi Superjet since its production in 2008. The first crash during a demonstration flight in Indonesia in 2012, hitting a mountain, and the second burned during landing at Sheremetyevo airport in 2019. The crashed plane was equipped with French-made SAM 146 engine and operated passenger flight for Gazprom Avia since 2015. Its last regular flight with passengers, according to Flightradar 24 data, was on April 26. So about this latest crashed plane. As reported by DW, after Western countries imposed a ban on supplying aircraft and parts to Russia in spring 2022, UAC began developing a fully import substituted Sukhoi Superjet, but production has not yet begun. Well, we constantly complain that sanctions don't work, but as we see, sometimes they do work a little after all. After the sanctions were imposed in 2022 against Russia for invading Ukraine, not only did the production of Sukhoi Superjet 100 become impossible, but even servicing was pushed into a corner. As noted by military political observer Alexander Kovalenko, today some of the Sukhoi Superjet 100s are not flying because they need repairs that cannot be done. Some planes are dismantled for parts to service other aircraft, but considering the low reliability of the aircraft in general, it constantly needs repair and spare parts, the expert explained. There was a time when Russian propaganda called the Sukhoi Superjet 100 a killer of Airbus and Boeing. So far, the Sukhoi Superjet 100 only kills its passengers. Well, it's a pity, of course, that sanctions work so slowly. We would like it a bit faster, but thank you at least for that. Before I continue, I want to thank all of you who send coffees on Buy Me a Coffee and become patrons. Subscribe to my Twitter page where I post regular updates about the situation in Ukraine, and to my Instagram where I show the daily life in Ukraine. Russian MFA spokes Alkashe Maria Zakharova issued a great statement that Ukraine is preparing to blow up the dam of Kyiv hydroelectric power station and Kyiv reservoir, which is near Kyiv, allegedly to blame Russia for it. The Center for Countering Disinformation and the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine explained that Kremlin's statements about dam destruction aim to provoke panic among Ukrainians. Russians hope that under the influence of fear, Ukrainians will demand concessions from Russia. At the same time, they assure that Russia lacks the means and capabilities to destroy the dams near Kyiv and Kyiv, neither through missile strikes nor sabotage, as the dams are heavily guarded. This view was echoed by retired Major General of the SBU Viktor Yahun, who stated that destroying these dams would require precisely targeted missile strikes or internal detonation below the waterline, actions beyond Russia's current capability. Yahun declared and clarified that situation very simple. Whether it is the Kakhovka Dam, Kyiv or Kyiv Dam, they cannot be destroyed from the outside. It can only be done from inside by placing a significant amount of explosives into machinery room located below the water level. A significant amount means tons, like at least 10 tons. Reminding that the Russian Federation continues attempts to destabilize the situation in Ukraine as part of the disinformation operation Peace, trying to scare Ukrainians with threats of new terrorist acts. As I have mentioned in my previous videos, I will leave a link in the description and you can find it as well in the end of the video. Remember that shortly after the terrorist attack on the Kakhovka hydroelectric power station about a year ago, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin also claimed that the attack on the hydroelectric power station was the handiwork of Ukraine. As we recall, the world didn't react very actively to such tragedy when thousands of homes were left without electricity. Hundreds of people died. It was also a major environmental disaster, and the West condemned it. Powerfully condemned it. Thank you. So interestingly, if Kyiv, European capital, goes underwater, will that be enough for the West? Probably not. By the way, I live not far from the Dnieper River, and I'm just interested, besides EcoFlow and power banks for winter, should I raise money for a boat? What do you think, guys? Let me know. General Budanov, head of Ukraine's military intelligence, said there won't be much good news this year, unfortunately. There is no catastrophic threat from the north from Russia, but the problem tends to escalate. He responded to questions about Kremlin's plan to mobilize 300,000 Russians for an offensive against eastern and northern occupiers in the coming months. If I start answering that question about Russia's attack from the north, we will provoke panic again. Well, let's put it in this way. There are problems. They tend to escalate, warned Budanov. He emphasized, there is no catastrophe, but ignoring problems won't make them disappear. You see, he said, for me it's a bit of a humorous situation, because when everyone shouted for 2 years that there would be an attack from the north, we all said it wouldn't happen. Nothing happened. At the moment when we said there would be an attack from the north, now everyone immediately asked, maybe there won't be. noted the head of the GUR. However, Budanov did not specify the directions in the north where there is a threat. According to the General Staff summary on the morning of July 13th, there were no significant changes in the operational situation on the Volyn and Polisa regions. Meanwhile, on the border with Chernihiv and Sumy regions, Russian Federation maintains military presence, conducts sabotage, and fires at the border. In May, Defense Minister Rustem Umerov warned that against the backdrop of a new offensive in the Kharkiv region, which began on May 10th, Russia is preparing to open a front in the north. Andriy Kovalenko, head of the Center for Countering Disinformation at the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, commenting on Budanov's words, said, "For Ukraine, there is currently no threat of an offensive from Belarusian territory. Many people somehow confuse the north, as mentioned by Budanov and Belarus. These are different things. There is no threat of an offensive from Belarus," he said. Well, guys, what do you think? How likely is a Russian attack from the north, and do you think they will again move towards Kyiv? Write in comments. Next week, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to visit the United Kingdom. This was reported by the British newspaper The Guardian, citing its own sources. The president has already spoken with the new British Prime Minister Keir Starmer at the NATO summit in Washington, but this will be his first opportunity to meet with a broader delegation of the Labour government, which is ready to confirm ongoing support of Britain. But we need to solve some issues. One day, Starmer said that Ukraine should decide for itself whether to strike Russia with British Storm Shadow missiles, and that Ukraine can use them as it wishes. Bloomberg wrote about this. The conversation with journalists took place during a trip to the NATO summit in Washington. Starmer explained that Ukraine can use missiles for its defensive purposes as it wishes in accordance with international humanitarian law. But then they write that Britain did not give Ukraine permission to use Storm Shadow missiles for strikes on Russian territory. The country's defense department stated that the government's policy regarding the use of long-range missiles has not changed. The Telegraph, citing a senior defense source, said that the situation has more nuance than the president assumed, our president. It is noted that permission to use Storm Shadow missiles on Russian territory will require approval from 3 countries, including the United Kingdom. Another country that produces Storm Shadow is France. In short, unfortunately, even here, officials fear escalation. It is still unknown how the use of someone's weapons will involve this country in a war, but everyone is very afraid of this. But we hope that after the president's visit, there will be a little bit more clarity. For the first time in 40 years, Russian television will not broadcast the Olympic Games, which will take place from July 26 to August 11 in Paris, writes Sports.ru. In December of last year, the International Olympic Committee allowed individual athletes from Russia and Belarus to participate in Olympics in a neutral status without a flag, anthem, colors, or any other state symbols. At the same time, athletes who support the war in Ukraine and athletes with contracts with Russian and Belarusian military personnel were banned from participating in the Olympics. As glavne.in.ua writes, only 15-16 people from Russia will go to the Olympic Games in Paris, mostly competing in disciplines not of interest to the mass audience. In addition to major TV channels, Channel 1, Russia 1 and Match TV, streaming services will not show the Summer Olympics 2024 either. In February, OKO's press service announced that they were not interested in buying a license. We believe that considering the exclusion of Russian athletes, this event is not of interest to the audience in Russia. The Olympic Games were last not shown on television in 1984 when USSR declared a boycott of the Summer Games in Los Angeles due to the gross violation of the Olympic Charter by the American side, the absence of adequate security measures for the USSR delegation, and the anti-Soviet campaign unfolded in the USA. They refused to broadcast, then why the hell would anyone even let your players and sportsmen if they will not be seeing or appreciated anyway? Well, that's it for today, and I want to thank all of you for supporting Ukraine, watching Ukrainian content. Please like this video, and if you really liked it, you can support the channel's development on Patreon or buy me a coffee. See you soon, and Slava Ukraini!